What's up, everybody? So today we're going to talk about bee-hopping. I did a previous tutorial before on surfing, and this time we're going to talk about bee-hopping. So bee-hopping is not really that hard. It can be a challenge, especially when you get really fast when you're bee-hopping, but it's not really that hard. I think it's one of those things that's very easy to understand, very hard to master. So today I'm just going to start this off by saying I'm not like an expert in bee hopping. I do it for fun every now and then. It's not like I'm some sort of god at bee hopping or like I'm some sort of, champion at it. But I'm pretty decent at it, so I figured might as well. I made a surf tutorial, might as well make a bee hop tutorial. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Basically, this tutorial is just going to be about how to just kind of get started with bee hopping, and I'll let you guys kind of figure it out from there. It's not going to be super long, so the first thing that I want to say is, obviously, I have a hand camera here so you can see my hand movements as we talk. And then I have a keylogger up above that will show my key presses. And really just shows WASD, Shift, Control, and Space. And I have Control bound to crouch, although I think it might be Shift is the default. I think I switched the two. But either way, just know that when I'm pressing Control, I'm crouching. So, okay. So real quick, let's talk about bee hopping. So the first thing I want you to notice is, you see this little percentage down here? It says like 6 strafes, 93, 94%. Okay, the first thing we need to talk about with bee hopping, before we even start talking about the movement, is the strafe sink percentage. What that percentage means is, that is basically the percentage of how long you are holding down A or D while strafing. So, for example, if I jump here and I don't hold it, it doesn't change, right? But if I move my mouse without holding A or D, notice it goes way down. So what that percentage means is that's basically your percentage of how well are you syncing up A and D with your mouse movement. You'll understand that in a second. I just wanted to point that out just so you have that in your mind. One last thing about sync is what that percentage is. It's called sync. Sometimes it'll actually be called sync when you're looking at it down there. But one last thing about it, you should try to aim for above 85% when you're learning. At least 80. Like, if you can at least get above 80%, you're doing okay. Try to go to 90 to 95%. If you ever see anyone with 100%, it's probably because they have some kind of bind for it. It's almost physically impossible to get 100% sync. Like, it is literally, like, you have to be a literal robot to get that kind of sync. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about the movement, because that's what you guys came here for, right? You're like, I'm jumping, I don't get why, like, I'm bee hopping, I'm trying my best, like, this is really hard. It's like, trying but can't really do it. Okay, so with bee hopping, it's basically like surfing. You just don't want to hold W. As soon as you start, no W, right? You use W to run up, but then no more W. It's all A and D. That's all you got to do. Just A and D. Hold space, A and D. That is if you're on an auto hop server. If it's not auto hop, you can't hold space. You have to like spam scroll wheel or something. But okay. So basically, to get started bee hopping, you just want to hold W and jump off the initial platform. Once you've jumped off, you basically just want to hold A or D in the direction of your first movement. Okay, so the first thing you should learn with bee hopping is you need to synchronize your A and D movements with your mouse. That's what that sync percentage was. So every time you hold A, you need to be moving left. Every time you hold D, you need to be moving right. But there are some times where you don't necessarily have to move your mouse. For example, if you're jumping in a straight line. Like, see, I'll show you. So I start off doing a little zigzag, but then I'm jumping in a straight line. So I can still just hold A or D, and it's not really affecting me. Because bee hopping is basically just air strafing, so the only thing that actually affects you is how you move your mouse, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but, just understand that just holding A or D by itself is not going to affect you, but you do have to be holding it when you move your mouse. Okay, now that that's out of the way. So let's talk about your movement. So why do people zigzag in bee hopping? Well, without getting into the math and the complicated game engine physics and science and all that, essentially, when you move left or right, you gain speed. Just a little bit. So when you gain speed, it can increase your speed exponentially by zigzagging back and forth. So that's why you see people zigzagging when they're b-hopping, right? But if you just move straight, notice I'm not really gaining speed. My speed was literally just 851 for like 6 hops there. It didn't gain speed at all when I sit in a straight line. However, despite the fact that you gain speed when you go left or right, your initial thought might be, okay, I'm just going to go left or right on every single jump. Like literally left, right, and I'll just magically gain speed. But that's not technically how b-hopping works. So it's taken me a while to make this video because this is a really complicated topic, and I'm trying to make this really easy, but it's really not. And I want to be straightforward with you guys and be honest with you guys and say that this isn't easy to understand. It takes a while to wrap your head around. The best way I can explain it is this. You do gain speed when you go left or right. However, if you go too fast, you won't gain any speed. If you go too slow, you still won't really gain any speed. There's like a sweet spot when you're strafing. Because you can't, like, for example, you can't just do this. You know what I mean? Like, watch my speed. Okay, so I start off, I'm at like 400 now, but when I just do this, see how it just cut my speed down from like 500 to 380 for a split second there? That's what I mean. You can't go too fast, you can't go too slow. There's a very, very specific time frame in which you have to time your strafes, if that makes sense. But you'll get a feel for that. That's okay. You don't have to master that right now. I just wanted to show you that just so that you're aware that just because you're going left and right constantly doesn't mean that you're going to gain any speed. So you have to do it very smoothly. So, okay. So let's talk about this. So what is my strategy? Let me just explain it this way. My strategy for b-hopping, whenever I'm bunny hopping, the first thing that I do is I kind of do this little wiggle for the first little bit. Until I start gaining speed, I start to do this little wiggle. And basically, I just kind of keep going with this tiny little wiggle. And notice the further that I go, the smaller my strafes are. Like, I'm not doing these big, wide strafes. Like, I'm not doing this every single jump. Notice as I start, I'm going backwards now technically, but notice how I start, I'm just doing like these little tiny mini strafes. And that's basically your key. So when you first start b-hopping, like literally from the first platform, you're going to do these big, wide strafes. But as you start getting further, you're just going to make them smaller and smaller. And you'll just kind of gain speed as you turn. You don't necessarily need to focus on trying to do these huge, humongous Joe Mama strafes. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's just kind of pointless. Because you also have to realize that bunny hopping is a little bit different from what you might expect when you think of bunny hopping. Bunny hopping is a race. Like, you are racing for the fastest time, essentially. Whether that's actually your goal or not, that's essentially what is happening. So if you're just sitting here doing this on every single platform, even if you're already way faster than the rest of the platforms, like, it's just not going to be a good time. You're going to be slow. You're not going to gain any speed. I mean, you might start gaining speed, but you'll be kind of out of control. And it's not efficient. Like, in all those times that I strafed back and forth on these, I could have just jumped like 4 different platforms. Like, I could have just went like this and then jumped to this platform, and this one. Right? I don't have to hit every single platform, and I don't have to strafe and do these crazy zigzags on every single platform. Alright? Makes sense? Good. Okay. Here's a bad habit of mine, and it's one of those, like, do as I say, not as I do kind of things. It's something I want you guys to know because I want you guys to not get into the habit of this like I have. And that is, sometimes, like, basically with b-hopping, you're essentially jumping from one platform to the next, right? But what happens if you have just too much speed or just not enough speed to make it to the next platform? So you kind of bail. And, like, okay, let's say, using my cursor here, let's say I'm going to b-hop from this platform to that white platform over there. So I'm just skipping this one. What if I'm, like, halfway through this hop, and I'm like, I can't make it, so I better just turn around. So what that would look like would be like this. Like that. I mean, you can do that, but, like, you really should try to avoid doing those, like, backwards maneuvers. It's not going to help anybody. It slows you down. It doesn't give you a good time one of those things I really think you guys should just stomp out if you're doing it, okay? I just want to share that because I do that sometimes. And actually, if you watch some of my bhop videos, you'll literally see me do that sometimes. And it's just a bad habit. So it's just one of those things, like, if you can avoid it, try not to, okay? Okay, so I know this has been all over the place, ironically. But that's basically it. Bhopping is really straightforward. Ironically, that's kind of a funny thing to say. Get it? Straightforward. Bhopping is pretty straightforward though. It's really just like you just zigzag and then you go straight, essentially, like these little mini strafes. Big zigzag and then little zigzags. That's essentially the entire video in like one little sentence. I don't know really more else to say, honestly. There's not really that much to say about bhopping. Just kind of strafe and just keep your movements smooth like you're surfing. And just kind of go from there. I mean, it's not really that hard. This applies even outside of like bhop servers. Even in like normal competitive servers, the same thing applies. You just want to keep your movement as straight as possible. By the way, I did that backwards movement thing. Did you see it? You might have not caught it in time. I did it again after I literally just told you guys not to do it. It's a bad habit, I'm telling you. That's why I'm saying, like, you guys should not get in these habits. By the way, if you want to play this map is called bhop Japan. So if you're ever looking in the bhop servers and you see this map, feel free to play it, of course. It's pretty fun. It's kind of a long map. It's actually a tier 3 map, so it says it's tier 1 here. Some of them call it tier 3. It doesn't really feel like a tier 3 map. It's a long map is all it is. Like, even the world record time is almost 2 minutes, so your first time playing this map on a server, you might not actually beat it in time. But just keep that in mind. Anyway, so yeah, guys, that's all I really had to say. I didn't want this video to be super long. There's not really much else to say about bhopping. Just zigzag, keep your movement smooth, sync A and D. You know, try not to strafe too much or too little. Just try to feel the flow. You'll kind of feel it as you go. It's one of those things you'll really feel. It's not something I can really explain on paper. But anyway, sorry this video wasn't like super extremely helpful, but I just tried to get some information out there so you guys can get started. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it, of course. Dislike if you didn't like it. That's totally fine. Definitely leave a comment below. I appreciate all the feedback. And if you haven't already, watch my surf tutorial. That's a lot of fun too. And check out my bhopping and surfing videos if you want, if that also piques your interest. But either way, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day today. Peace out.